Talk Radio. You're in to all things music.
Powered by EnterTalk Radio, the groove of the music industry. I'm your host, John Robinson, coming to you live from Vinyl Night Studios in beautiful Southern California. This show features some of the best and most influential people in the music industry. Each week, we will feature an intimate, candid, and in-depth one-on-one with all the great musicians, recording engineers, singers, and producers that have changed the world. I'd like to give a big shout-out to my sponsors, DW Drums, Peisty Cymbals, Remo Drumheads, Regal Tip Drumsticks, Brushes, Blue Microphones, Zoom Cameras, LP Percussion, Roland, Auralex, and Source Connect Pro. You can also download our app, EnterTalk Radio app, on your iPhone or Android whenever you're on the go. Elliot Easton, man, my friend, as a lead guitarist for the legendary rock band The Cars. Elliot has sold well over 30 million records worldwide, and his reputation as a tasteful musician with innovative soloing, great tones, and creating unforgettable hooks. Elliot has been honored with 4 different signature model guitars, a Kramer EE Pro model, a signature Gretsch, which he recently designed 2 incredible new models in production, a new Gibson Tiki model SG Custom, which I want, and a Martin acoustic guitar. Elliot's toured with Hall & Oates on their acoustic tour and recorded Philadelphia Freedom with Elton John, the 2 Rooms. He's also performed the first MTV Unplugged show with Jules Shear, Difford and Tilbrook, and Syd Straw. Elliot was part of the house band, or the band, tribute to John Lennon, concert in Tokyo with Linda Ronstadt, Peter Asher, Yoko Ono, and Sean Lennon. He's also recorded with Jerry Lee Lewis and Brian Wilson, playing on his first solo and record and performing live. Elliot has delved into film work, providing the end title for Quentin Tarantino's Jackie Brown and Monte Carlo Nights. He's also done music supervision at Sundance Festival award-winning film Core Dog Man. Elliot has produced albums with Amy Rigby, the Ziggens, and many others. Recently, Elliot has been the lead guitarist for Creedence Clearwater Revisited, and he has developed an all-acoustic and contributed an all-acoustic orchestra track for Martin's My Favorite Martin, celebrating Martin Guitar's 175th anniversary, as well as several other CDs for Solidaire Records. In 2011, the great band The Cars, rock and roll nominees, by the way, released the first new album in 23 years, Move Like This, with all the surviving original members, and toured. Elliot's new band, Elliot Easton's Tiki Gods, Easton Island, was released in 2013, and he also released a band, The Empty Hearts, in 2014. You are busy. Ladies and gentlemen, the engine of The Cars, Elliot Easton. Welcome to Vinyl Night.
Hey, JR, how are you, buddy?
I am good, man. Long time. How are you?
I'm doing just great. Glad to hear from you and on this nice holiday weekend, and it's good. I like Thanksgiving.
You know what? I think it's my favorite time of the year also. You know, it's the weather's just right, and people around us that we love.
Your top button of your pants and fall asleep in front of a football game, and then you know it's Thanksgiving.
Hey, man, I totally agree. I'm thinking about that pipe and slippers and a dog also.
That's right. It's a nice time.
Anyway,
for family.
I'm so glad to have worked with you and know you and collaborated with you, and I appreciate you coming on the show. And what I'd like to do with all my guests is I like to go back to the beginning, and because in my gut feeling and everything, we are all who we are now because of our parents and our childhood. And were your parents musical?
Well, that's just it. I mean, what you just said is so absolutely true for me. I'll start out with the fact that my mother is a Juilliard-trained singer and sang professionally well up until she got married, until she was 26. She had a career. And she was a fantastic singer, so there was always music in the house. She kind of was like a Rosemary Clooney kind of Judy Garland singer, and she was as good as them. You know, I mean, I really always felt like she was like a star, but it just didn't happen for her, and life got in the way, and that's how it was back then. And then she kind of got to enjoy it through me, through my success. It meant so much to her. She'd start bawling every time one of the Cars songs would come on the radio and stuff like that. But yeah, she gave me the gift of music. We always had great music playing in the house, whether it was, classical or pop music, and as a kid, and the 50s and the early 60s and stuff, and she always sang around the house, and so yes, there's always music, and definitely. I mean, it was not pushed on me in any way, but I gravitated towards it because I loved it so much. And then I guess the first time I turned on the TV and saw a cowboy with a guitar, that was it. I said, well, that's for me. That's what I want to do. I want to be Roy Rogers or Gene Autry or something. And then I remember, I was 3 years old in 1956, and I saw Elvis on TV, and that was really it. Every family likes to tell stories that go down in history as like your favorite stories that the family tells, and they always tell the story about when I was a baby, and I saw it. First time I saw Elvis on TV, I ran and got my mother a glass of water and a comb to comb my hair in a spit curl with a duck's ass, and stood in front of the mirror with my Mickey Mouse guitar, and that was it, and not a whole lot has changed between then, in 59, 60 years since then. So, yeah, I got the bug early, and definitely grew up in a house of, that taught me what good music was.
You're right. That's a great story. Did you have brothers and sisters that played also or sang?
Not really. I have brothers and sisters. In fact, believe it or not, I'm the oldest, and there's two sets of twins younger than me. But none of, yeah, I know. All fraternal, no identicals. But I have a brother and a sister who are just about 5 years younger than me, and then two sisters who are 12 years younger than me, which is a little unusual. But none of them went into music. They all love music, but none of them went into performing or playing music.
Right, and you were born on Long Island, right?
I was actually born in Brooklyn and lived there for the first 3 years of my life, and then we moved to Queens, New York, in Forest Hills, 2 streets away from where the Ramones apparently formed, in Forest Hills, Queens. And then in 1960, I was 5 or 6 years old, and we moved to Massapequa, Long Island. Yeah.
Ah. Wow. So, go ahead.
No, I was just doing the math in my head. I guess I was 6. Now, I was born in December '53, so it's always like a year less than I think it is because I didn't get to the next year till the very end of December. So I was just thinking about, well, if we got there in '60, I must have been 6, not 7, because I was born in December '53.
Wait, what's your birthday?
December 18.
Okay, mine's the 29th, so we have a lot in common there. I get it.
Okay, are you a Sag?
I'm a Cap, so you're the end of the Sag, I think, aren't you?
I guess so.
Well, happy pre-birthday. It's coming up.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. Same to you.
Thank you. I heard a rumor. All right, so. What was your very first axe? What was your guitar that you first started actually fingering,
It would have to be the Mickey Mouse guitar. I remember the old Mickey Mouse Club show on in the early days of television. And I loved that show, and I loved Jimmy Dodd, the guy who sang and played his mouse guitar. It was those days where there wasn't even 24-hour programming on television. My mom told me that I'd sit on the floor in front of the TV watching the Indian Chief test pattern until the Mickey Mouse Club show came on. And I was just one of those kids. And that was, I always tell people, I think Jimmy Dodd was one of my first guitar heroes just because I was so impressionable. I was a really small kid, and he just made the guitar look fun. And then, of course, all the singing cowboys were exciting. And shortly after that came, the early rock and roll era. And I just went nuts for the Everly Brothers and Elvis and people like that. Anybody cool who played guitar was okay with me. I just loved that image. Probably much like you, seeing a guy at a set of drums just going wild as a kid probably triggered something in you saying, that's what I want to do. And
totally.
And that's how it was for me. I'd see these guys and they just looked so cool to me. I mean, God, the Everly Brothers in their black suits with their Gibson guitars, I was hooked.
No, that's, it obviously, it rubbed off on you because of your, great musical contribution, to both the last 2 centuries, I must say. I know we sound old, but that's the way it is. Shake, shut up. All right, so do you remember your first band then at when you formed it or got in it?
Yeah,
as a kid.
Yeah, it wasn't like a real band, but we used to play out on the back patio in the backyard and stuff like that, and that was probably just around the time of surfing music, like the early '60s and stuff, and playing stuff like Wipeout and Pipeline and all the surf tunes before the British invasion. Right. I was already interested in guitar and took it pretty seriously. And so I guess the first music that I really learned how to play, with any kind of proficiency with things like Walk, Don't Run and stuff. And the Ventures were a great role model because the songs were fun to play. They weren't so hard that you couldn't play them. They weren't super technical. But at the same time, you didn't have that old cliche story of trying to go get guitar lessons and the guy wants you to play Three Blind Mice or something, and you want to play rock and roll and you lose interest, and so you don't study and you fall away from it. But I think one of the brilliant things about the Ventures, and I guess it's probably the same with the Shadows in England, is that those songs were not so technically difficult but sounded great. I mean, Apache and all those, they sounded good.
Oh, yeah.
So it felt great to play them as a young kid, and that was probably my first experience playing with other people and trying to make a sound like that. Didn't have any name or anything to it, just a bunch of friends getting together.
Right. I think you and I were in the same exact band in different states at the same time.
Me, you, and 10 million other kids.
Thank God.
Thank God. That's such a beautiful thing, such a beautiful thing. It's
at that time, now, no, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't want to jump ahead. I was just going to say that probably, I think they say after the Beatles played on Ed Sullivan that first night, February 9th, 1964, about 1 million bands formed the next day. And Ludwig drums and Gretsch guitars and Ricky Mack guitars all of a sudden received a huge spike in sales, and it was like, wow, what's going on here? And that was the beginning of the real boom.
That's right. And it changed us all. And at that time, do you remember the first song or first couple of songs you had ever written at that period of time?
I've never really focused that much on songwriting, mainly just my instrumental work and playing guitar. But I put together a few little things back then, little country melodies and stuff like that. But I wasn't one of those guys that like when and you've been around some of the greatest songwriters, and you know what it's like. And like a real great songwriter can't help but writing. They'll write on a matchbook cover or a restaurant cocktail napkin or anything if they get an idea. They just have to write. And I was more wrapped up in trying to be a real good guitar player. So I didn't do a lot of writing as a kid, to be honest.
Right.
Yeah.
did you then, like, once you got into junior high, did you join the jazz band when you got into high school?
You know what, man? When I was in elementary school, I played clarinet in band, but they didn't offer guitar in the dance band or anything. In my high school years, at my high school, there was no opportunity to play guitar in like a school organized, musical unit. But I played in bands and played high school, played the dances Friday nights and stuff like that. But
right.
Nothing so organized as like the dance band or the jazz band. I would have enjoyed that very much, but it was just not something that was offered where I was.
Were you studying at all with anybody at that time?
John, I took lessons several times in my life, and I went to Berklee College of Music too, and each time I did it, I eventually lost interest and went back to learning how to play the way that seemed to work best for me, and that was really just sort of playing along with records, moving the needle back and back and back till I caught that one lick that I wanted to learn, and I'm not saying one is better than the other or anything like that, but it was great ear training because I'd get to the point where I could hear a guitarist on a record, and I could tell by the sound of say he was playing a G note, I could tell by the tonality of it where on the neck he was playing it. Was it an open G string, or was it the fifth fret on the D string, or whatever? You could hear it, and it was good training that way. And I have to say, I did most of my learning by playing along with records and picking up things that way, and making something of my own out of it. But I'd say I'm largely self-taught. I've tried several times in my life to be a good reader, and each time I lose interest, and I don't know. I don't know if it has something to do with me being lefty, but it's just I found it very difficult. Where some guys will read just like reading words off a piece of paper, I never got to that point. So just have to be honest about that. I mean, chord charts, of course, but as far as reading, never really swung with it.
Well, you know what? I don't think it hurt you one bit. And then that segues me into segment 2, talking about Berklee College of Music. We will be right back with legend Elliot Easton.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.
You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on Intertalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
Hi, I'm Tim Dolbear, the host of Sound Experience on Intertalk Radio. Each week, I talk with top professional audio engineers, producers, musicians, and the manufacturers that make the tools that we use in the studio each and every day. From capturing the perfect take to mastering your final release, and the tools and how the pros use them, we are going to dive deep into their process and learn from their experience. I look forward to you joining us each week on Sound Experience with me, your host, Tim Dolbear.
Hey, it's Tracy Smith
and Beth Venus
of Girls Talk Rock right here on the Intertalk Radio Network.
Every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Pacific.
Okay, Beth, they know that, but we want you to know that the industry pro's choice is Silver Tiger Production.
SDP is a full-service production agency offering sound, lighting, installations, talent buying, staffing, backline equipment rental, and sales. Kapow!
It's everything in the entertainment performance industry. It's all that.
SilverTigerProduction.com.
Welcome back to Vinyl Night. We are talking with guitar legend and member of the Cars, Elliot Easton, and God willing, you guys get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which you should have already been.
I don't know about God willing. I mean, if it happens, it happens. It would be nice. It's not the be-all and end-all for me. I'm sure you'd agree we didn't get into this thing to win trophies.
True.
But, this is our second year being nominated, so we'll see. It would be nice. It would be an honor. But I'm not so invested in it that I would be crushed or something if we don't get in.
Well, exactly. And, we're dealing with the same situation. I'm not going to really talk about it with Rufus and Shaka. So it's kind of an interesting thing. But, yes, when we left off, you had talked about, you had made the decision to go to Berklee. Tell me about that decision.
Well, I would have liked to have gone to Berklee right out of high school. I graduated high school in 1971. But my parents weren't too well off, and I guess I just hadn't made the arrangements in time to be able to go to Berklee right out of high school. So my first year of college was spent upstate New York at Brockport State, not too far from Rochester, New York. And during that time, I played in a band and played all the State University SUNYs all around upstate New York, all the, New Paltz and all, Binghamton and all those schools all around there, Utica, all around. And the next year I managed to get, because my dad had been in the service, I got a National Defense Student Loan, and that enabled me to attend Berklee, which was such a great thing. I mean, it's like 50 times more to go to Berklee now, but I remember with the dorm, with food, everything, it was like $5,280, I think, for a year at Berklee in 1972. And now I think it's probably $75,000-$80,000 a year. But it's funny, that loan, they only asked for $10 a month to be paid back, and I was paying that college loan back. I mean, the Cars are already making records, and I was still paying back that loan. It was just $10 a month. But I got there in 1972, and it was very exciting to be in a nice city like Boston on my own, and such a thriving live music scene, and an unusual scene in that it wasn't all cover bands. It was a lot of interesting, creative people and making their own music, and you were able to actually kind of make a living playing your own music in Boston, which would have been unheard of in Long Island, say. Where all the bands played cover songs and, top 40 and stuff like that. And I was very fortunate. Boston has been built up a lot over the years, but it was kind of had a nice small town feel then. And and it wasn't a bad place to scuffle. I mean, I was, pretty poor guy, but it wasn't so bad being in Boston as it would be, say, like being in Manhattan or something like that, and being so broke. You could get by, and I liked it a lot. I liked Boston and stayed. I ended up going to Berklee for about 2 years. I took an accelerated program. I took an advanced placement test, and they put me into an accelerated program, which was great because, they had so many levels of proficiency there among the students, and I couldn't. It was too precious to me to start with, this is a whole note and this is a quarter note. I wanted to learn, and so taking that advanced placement test, I was able to do 2 semesters in a time that a regular student was doing 1, and actually get into the arranging and learning stuff that was, useful, as opposed to 4/4 time is 4 beats per measure, and they really started at the beginning, which was almost like 3rd grade music class, and I didn't want to get stuck in that scene, and also it was very funny because if you broke down the amount of guitar players at Berklee that year, next of course came drummers. And then,
Right.
you know, a few sax players, a few trumpet players, you know. It was all these, like, rock and roll guys who probably just didn't know what to do with their lives. And their parents said they had to go to college, so they went to Berkeley, but I don't know how much they got out of it. It was kind of like an embarrassment in some ways. You didn't want to be known as a rock and roller going to Berkeley. And in fact, you'd kind of get a little bit mocked if you played like a Les Paul or a solid body guitar rather than like a big fat Gibson jazz guitar and stuff like that. I mean, it was that kind of vibe, you know. It was a jazz school.
Right.
Not like now.
I remember you're so triggering my exact memory of what I saw. I mean, we saw nothing but I got there in 73, so you and I obviously rubbed shoulders.
Yeah.
But I saw nothing but guitar players and a whole bunch of rock guitar players. And then I'll be honest, I did see a bunch of cats, you know, with like L5s and L7s and stuff. But there were a couple of them that did have these nice, rich Gibson jazz guitars, but couldn't play. And so I was like, well,
yeah.
You know.
There's that too. I mean, you know, as I'm sure our mutual dear friend Jeff Baxter says, he goes, he'll say, well, there's guitar players and there's guitar owners. So I wanted to be a guitar player. You
exactly.
know, a lot of guys geek out on just the gear part of it, but you know, it was in my blood, and it was what I was going to do with myself. And I can't say, I mean, you know, I got to a point at Berkeley where I kind of got to a crossroads, because if you remember back then, there were two kind of streams of study that you could take. You could either go with instrumental performance, which meant you would focus primarily on your instrument, and then there was arranging and composition. Knowing what I knew about myself, that I, you know, learned probably best just learning by on my own and with records and stuff like that. And I was already picking out Charlie Christian and Wes Montgomery solos and stuff like that. I thought, well, why waste this precious time on taking guitar lessons, which I probably won't even like anyway? So I took instrumental performance, which taught arranging and voicings and all the kind of things that were really helpful to me later on in life. And even in instrumental performance, you got a private lesson a week, so it was no big deal.
Right.
And I ended up teaching my teacher. He was like, "Hey, can you show me that?" You know, I do stuff like that. And he was just out of the Army band, and he was telling me I was holding my pick wrong and doing this and that. And then I just ripped off some like Cornell. I was crazy about Cornell Dupree in those years, and I just like played some R&B, like little sliding sixths and stuff. And he was like, "Wow, can you show me that?" So I remember one lesson I was teaching him.
I think I know that guy.
You know who I mean?
I do.
Yeah,
I've heard stories of.
Yeah, I've had a few things like that happen to me with Berkeley, where it's almost like a Hollywood kind of thing. For instance, just before I finally just threw in the towel and had enough of Berkeley, we had a final project where we had to write an arrangement for maybe an 8-piece band or something like that, and I did an arrangement of Lover Man.
Right.
And Herb Pomeroy was the remember Herb? He was the
absolutely.
He was the teacher. So I did my arrangement, stayed up all night working on it, worked my ass off on it, and then you were going to have a band was going to play your arrangement, and this was like your final. And he handed out the parts, and it sounded like a bunch of instruments falling down a flight of stairs. It's just, this is supposed to be a B natural, not a B flat, and this is that, and it's that, and now you got parallel fourths. That's not allowed. And he circled my entire chart and put a D on it, big red marker. And I was crushed. I mean, it's funny now, but at the time, I could feel like the blood coming to my face. Like I almost would felt I could almost be crying, start crying, because I'd worked so hard on it, and it was so discouraging because he just kind of like chuckled and circled it and gave it a D and like, good luck, buddy. You know, I hope you find some career in life. You know, maybe maybe you can be a chef or something. You know what I mean? So I was very discouraged by that, and I tell people I didn't really drop out of Berklee. I just sort of faded out. I started attending fewer and fewer classes and was very discouraged by the whole thing and by the John LaPorta 2/5 and the Lester Young half note.
Oh, yeah.
How they codified it, trying to make a school out of jazz, and so on some level it wasn't really working for me. But then roll up about 5 or 6 years later, and the cars are doing great. And I'm driving up Newbury Street in my brand new Jaguar, and who do I see around, Exeter or so? I see Herb Pomeroy, guy who so discouraged me that I gave up at Berklee. And I rolled down my window. He was walking. I said, "Hey, Herb, I'm one of your old students. Can I give you a lift?" He goes, "Yeah, thanks." So he gets into my new Jaguar, and he's looking around in the car, and he's going, "Well, what are you doing? What do you do?" And I said, "Well, I'm playing in this band called The Chorus, and we're doing pretty well and selling a bunch of records, and things are going well." And then we got up to our studio, Synchro Sound, which was the old Intermedia studio, but the Cars bought it.
Sure.
And and we had Danker and Donahue parking lot was right next door. And I said, "Well, I heard this is as far as I'm going. I got to go to my studio here that we own, and I can only give you a ride this far. But thanks a lot." And and I told him the story about him flunking me out and everything. And here I am driving him along in my new Jaguar, and he was like, "What's going on here?" And he would just kind of scratch his head. And it was a Hollywood moment. You just couldn't have. I mean, if you wrote it, they would go, "That's corny," but it really happened to me. So I guess I got a little bit of comeuppance,
Absolutely, but you know what? He did you a favor by giving you a D. I mean, think about it. If he given you an A,
he probably did.
It's all good.
It's all good, and we used to say, like, anybody who graduates Berklee ends up staying there teaching, and anybody who was good got a gig and left. And so
yeah, that's right.
That's kind of how it worked in those days. I don't say that about Berklee now. It's a much different school. My daughter, when she was between her junior and senior year in high school, went and took the 5-week summer course and just loved it. And I was so impressed with what they were doing there now. I mean, they even teaching music business for people who wanted to get into being managers and agents, and and there was movie production, and they had like practically their own television studio there that they could produce little shows and then and you could just get them in the dorms and stuff. And every building had every dorm had like Porter Studios and like little Pro Tools rigs in the basement, where if you had an idea 4 a.m, you could go down there and record. So they've really come a long way. I mean, when we were there, it was just the one building on Boylston Street and 150 Mass Ave, which was the dorm. Which
that's right.
My year was the first year that building was even open, and now they're all over the city. And as well, they have partnerships with colleges like Emerson, where if you do want to like take some TV courses or something, you can kind of blend your curriculum with a little bit of studying at like Emerson College and stuff. So it's just fantastic now. I mean, it's really wonderful.
Right, and I think they're partnered with Harvard also and some curriculums.
Yeah, could well be. See, there you go. They have lots of more buildings, and they were building, when I took my daughter there, they were building a 17-story high-rise. It was a new dorm, and there was going to be a health club in it, and the studios downstairs. Yeah, wow. It was unbelievable. Wow. But again, it wasn't $5,000 a year. It was like, $75,000 a year now. So,
well, I mean, we were there at the right time, but, that leads me into the Cars, and, WBN played Just What I Needed. I mean, that's the story. That was our day. When you get a radio station to to believe in you. And then you guys were voted Best New Artist in '78, man. I think that is just outstanding.
And it's just, it's a kind of thing. Well, thank you for that. But I was going to say, it's sort of, I don't know if it could ever happen today, because what actually happened was, I don't know if you ever worked at Northern Studios up in Maynard, Mass, Bill Reisman, but there was a studio up in Maynard, and we recorded live 2-track demos, just everybody playing onto a 2-track. And among those songs were Best Friend's Girl and Just What I Needed. And we were friends with Maxanne at WBCN, Maxanne Sartori. And she was a big booster of our band, even the band we had before the Cars, which was called Cat and Swing. And anyway, Maxanne started playing our song, our demo tape in heavy rotation. And it was getting reported in like the Galvin Report and Friday Morning Quarterback, or all those different radio tip sheets that that the radio stations would subscribe to, where they could look at all the markets in America and see who was playing what. In the primary stations, and the secondary stations would kind of follow what the big stations were doing. And so if you would see what WBCN in Boston was playing that particular week or month, you look at the chart and you might see, Aerosmith, Get Your Wings, Columbia.
Right.
I don't know, Elton John, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, MCA, Rocket. Okay. And then you see the Cars, Just What I Needed, tape. and it was getting reported like that in these radio tip sheets. So people all around the country, and most significantly in New York, were like reading these things because it was their Bible. And they were saying, what the heck is going on up in Boston? These guys, way up in BCN's top 10, and they don't have a record label.
Hi, this is Tim Dolbear, host of Sound Experience here on Intertalk Radio. And Source Connect by Source Element is the essential tool that we use to link between my studio in Austin, Texas, and the WS radio station in San Diego. Now, with Source Connect, not only can we communicate in real time and with HD audio, but it's synced up and is of a high enough quality that I can use it for real-time ADR work, remote recording, and overdubbing, and it even allows me to remotely control a DAW. Source Connect by Source Element. Affordable, high-quality audio and video connection over the internet for all of your production needs.
This is Jackie Bertoni from Jackie's Groove. Come join me weekly on my journey through the music business as I take you behind the velvet rope, interviewing industry notables such as Al Di Meola, Michael McDonald, and Al Jarreau, to name but a few. Listen to their stories on being in the studios recording #1 hits and onto the stages throughout the globe. Allow me to be your music historian. You can hear me live every Monday at 2 p.m. and every Wednesday at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time, or 24/7 on jackiesgroove.com. Ready to get your groove on?
Girls are talking rock again.
And people are listening.
Today we're talking bands.
Let's talk promotion. Red Giant Promo, graphics, EPKs, video, photos, social media, and brand building using content marketing.
But let's talk studio at CCMA, which is events, rehearsal, tour prep, piano, guitar, voice, rock band, lessons, workshops, and clinics. Yeah!
Both proud sponsors of Girls Talk Rock.
Well, get the lowdown on these services and contact me, Tracy, at girlstalkrock.com.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.
I love that. That's Elliot Easton's Tiki Gods. And that's I love that. We were talking to Elliot about, the Cars hit, and, you see everybody's record labels, and you guys just say tape.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing.
Was all that cut off? Did we not get any of that
I
story?
believe just the end of that was cut off.
Oh, just the end. So, as I was saying, radio stations all around the country would subscribe to these, what they call tip sheets, to see what the big stations were going on. And it was really, crucial, because then they would play them too. And that's kind of how a hit record started growing. But anyway, we were getting reported on WBCN in Boston, and in the column where it would say what label the band was on, it just said tape. So naturally, this piqued the curiosity of A&R guys, say, in New York. And they say, well, something's obviously going on up here in Boston. These guys are in heavy rotation just with their demo tape. So they started flying up on the old Eastern Shuttle and coming and checking us out, at club dates in Boston and stuff. And we met a lot of different label people, and we're wined and dined a little bit and courted by some of the nice labels that were out there. And ultimately we decided on going with Elektra Records. Right. And shortly after signing the record contract, we were playing at, I think, Holy Cross or Trinity. It was a Catholic college in Worcester, Mass. And our manager brought Roy Thomas Baker, the great producer, to come hear us. And it was a snowed out night. There's probably 8 people in the gymnasium. And but Roy loved it, and he really liked the band. He said, well, he kind of was like a Monty Python character. Oh, that's lovely. Do you fancy going to England and making a record? And we, none of us had been anywhere. I'd never been further south than D.C. and never been out of the country or anything like that. Probably only been on a couple of plane flights, to be honest. And so the idea of going to London, making the record at George Martin's Studio Air on Oxford Street, and living in a luxury rented house in the Mayfair part of district of London. This was unbelievable, man, to a 22-year-old kid. I mean, this was mind-blowing, So we got to England and got to London, made the record. It was very, very exciting for me. The whole record took 12 days to record. Everyone's shocked. But I don't think you'd be shocked at it, because you understand what first records are like. You're basically playing your clubs, and you already have your parts down from playing them for a year or so in a club. And so I did nobody wants to believe me, but this is the God's honest truth. I did all the guitar parts on the record, all my parts, in a day and a half for the whole album. Wow. I just blew through the whole thing, went from one song to the next, spool this one up, spool that one up, and just, got all my sounds really quickly. And 1 day and a half, all the guitars done. 12 days to make the record, 9 days to mix, 1 song a day. That was Roy's rule. And so the whole thing was done in 21 days, and it's still selling. And wow. That was pretty cool. That was pretty darn cool. And, I was sort of inside the bubble of it. I really didn't fully comprehend when the band started getting successful that, you know how it is when you first get there. People know who you are, and you don't know who they are, and they know all about you and about your record and stuff. And it blew my mind. I will say it was definitely an exciting time, and it seemed like there's a curve to the whole thing, and we were definitely on the up of the bell curve at that point. And every day brought some new and exciting piece of news or a gig that we're going to do with somebody that we always admired, and all those sorts of things, And Paul McCartney was recording next door in the other studio, and meeting these different people and stuff. It was all brand new, and it was terribly exciting. It really was.
Well, and this is why you guys will get in next year. And did you remember, all right, so when you did that whole first record and you cut your guitars in a day and a half, Do you remember exactly which guitar you used on which part throughout your career?
Well, mostly yes. That one was easy because I only owned 2 guitars.
Okay.
We were just making our first record, so we hadn't had any real big money coming in. So for that record, I had a Les Paul, and I had a Telecaster, and I had a Martin acoustic, and that was it. It had 2 pedals, an echo pedal and a chorus pedal, which had just come out, the Roland chorus, and we had a bunch of Ampeg amps. That we got a deal on somewhere in Massachusetts, and that was it, man. I mean, that was it. So it's not hard for me to remember what I used on that record because I didn't have that much to use. Later on, of course, as you know, the collection starts growing exponentially, and
yes.
A few years later, I lived in Weston, Massachusetts. Not Western, but the town Weston. So I was Easton of Weston. And one time, my dad was visiting me up there in Massachusetts, and he went into the basement. He goes, "Do you have any idea how many guitars you have?" And I said, "No, Dad, I haven't really counted them." He goes, "You have 462 guitars." I thought, Jesus Christ.
Wow. Oh, my God.
I know. I didn't realize that they were just all piled up down there. But, I've had a lot of guitars over the years. But, and I was obsessed with guitars. I was one of those kids that, once the Beatles hit, that we kind of glossed over the line a little bit. But that night when they played the Sullivan Show, I didn't sleep that night. I was vibrating and tossing and turning and felt like I saw my future in front of me, that's what I was going to do. And I know that's not so unique. Millions of kids probably had the same thought. But not everybody actually achieved it as you and I did. And it's such a blessing. But I was one of those kids who wrote away to all the companies for their guitar catalogs and brochures and used to, stick them in my textbook and read the Gibson catalog rather than reading history and stuff like that. I was obsessed. So when I used to go to music stores like Sam Ash and stuff on Long Island just to look at guitars, just to see guitars in person. I was so guitar crazy. So when the Cars made it, it took me a while to realize that I could actually talk to people from Fender and Gibson and they would know who I was. And this was big stuff for me, man. This was and of course we were a hit group, so they were very happy to work with me. And being left-handed, this was a wonderful thing because they would make stuff for me that they didn't normally offer. And they'd custom build stuff for me and it was such an honor, and it was like a dream come true that I never would have even dared dream. And then rolling up a few years later, and you're going to tell me I've got a Gibson guitar signature model with my name on it, I would have thought you were nuts. You got to be kidding me. So realizing all those fantasies and dreams of childhood, I have to say, I'm very blessed, and I have a lot of gratitude for it. I have never been jaded about it or take it for granted. And to this day, when that brown truck pulls up and there's a big, long, oblong box that he's got to deliver to me, there's a guitar in there. It's like Christmas morning. I've never been like, oh yeah, just another guitar. Or, guitar. Who cares? I've never been like that. It's always just like, wow, look at this, I've never changed that way. I've always kept, and I've tried to keep that kind of innocence about it where it doesn't become anything that you take for granted because it's a blessing. There's so many guys out there slugging it out, playing in clubs and stuff, and would love to be in that position. And I don't take it for granted. I'm really grateful for it.
Well, it shows. It shows in your personality and your playing and your contribution. So you obviously mentor in many ways. While this segment winds down, did you have a mentor that you'd like to give patronage to?
Oh, boy. That's a very good question. In different ways, I suppose. There was there was no like famous guitar player or anything like that took me under his wing, but there was one person who I would love to give a shout out about, and that there was a little music store, medium sized, but it was a private mom and pop music store in Freeport, Long Island that was called Grayson's. And I was telling you a little while ago how guitar crazy I was. So Grayson's was where I got my first 2 guitars, and I washed dishes in a restaurant to get my first Fender Telecaster and so on. And I used to take the bus to go to Grayson's just to be around guitars. And the store was owned by a guy named Bernie Grayson and his dad, Pops Grayson, who looked like Louis Dombrowski from the Bowery Boys, the guy who owned the squeeze shop guy, the old man. And everybody called him Louis Dombrowski. So anyway, I'll try to make this short because I know we're running out of time, but to talk about a nice person, he never lost patience with me. Once I ordered the guitar, I'd probably call him like once every other day saying, Bernie, has my guitar come in yet? And I'm sure I drove him crazy, but I would go to the store and just like help the stock guy, Danny, like sweep the floor or move cartons around and do anything I could. And then one day, Bernie took in an old Fender Jaguar that somebody had put a psychedelic paint job on, and he said, why don't you take this guitar home and you can play it until your new Fender Telecaster comes in? I mean, who would do that now? And he actually, I'm sure he did it, so maybe he hoped I would stop calling him so much. But the thing about it is I'd stay there until late, until 6 or 7 when they closed. And he took me under his wing in a way that he didn't want me to get back on the bus, that I might get hurt or something might happen. It was dark out. I was only a young guy. He would take me home, and it was out of his way. He drove me home, and he was just so kind to me. So here, just to end the story, a couple of years later, roll up to about 79, and I'm at one of my first NAMM shows at McCormick Place in Chicago. And I'm standing there, and across the hall, across the floor, in another booth, I see Bernie Grayson. So I went up to him, and I said, Bernie, I don't know if you're going to remember me. My name's Elliot. I played left-handed guitar, and I used to drive you nuts in the store, and I told him about the cars and the success we were having. And he had tears in his eyes, and he turns away from me and goes to his wife and goes, honey, you got to come here. This is the kid I always used to tell you about. And he didn't forget me at all, and I guess he told his wife about this crazy kid who used to love guitars so much that he'd come to the store and work for free, and so that was such a nice feeling, to be able to tell him that, his mentoring and his encouragement and his support actually ended up turning out well, and I was doing well with music. So if there's anybody that comes to mind, I would say Bernie Grayson, just not so much on a musical basis, but just be encouraging me to stay with music and never discouraging me no matter how much of a pain in the neck I was, because he knew I just was guitar crazy.
Listen, Elliot, those are just wonderful words of, your story is just a beautiful success story. And while this segment right now is running out, I cannot thank you enough for being guest on Vinyl Night. And of course, you and I need to get back together and do some writing and playing and just hanging. I'm going to sign off. You've been listening to Vinyl Night, powered by Intertalk Radio, the groove of the music industry. I'd like to thank my guest, Elliot Easton. You can contact me at jr@vinylnight.com or download the app, intertalkradio.com. Make it your Vinyl Night. Thanks, Elliot. Talk to you soon, buddy. Have a Thanksgiving. Great. Make this your Vinyl Night. I'm John J.R. Robinson, and every week, music creation comes alive through stories, experiences, and sounds when vinyl records filled our hearts and minds. My friends and I share our tips and techniques used in creation of iconic tracks for recording artists such as Michael Jackson, Eric Clapton, Quincy Jones, and Steve Winwood, to name a few. Vinyl has emerged hot, and the soul of vinyl defines art and passion which burns deepest at night. Tune in.
Hi, this is Tim Dolbear from Eclectica Studios. I'm a full-time mixing and recording engineer. I work with Grammy winners, labels, and indie artists, using state-of-the-art digital mixing and restoration tools and the very best in analog gear. Really, though, it's my ability to bring tracks to life and fulfill your vision for your music. This has made me sought after by producers and artists worldwide. So spend your time working on music and not chasing a mix down a rabbit hole. Go to timdolbear.com and check out our free one-song mix offer.
You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on Intertalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.